There's a certain kind of smile that belongs to the late 90s. It's a bright, hopeful, slightly pixelated smile, beamed into our living rooms from the technicolor world of kids' television. It's the smile of a generation of young stars who seemed to have it all figured out. They were talented, they were charismatic, and they were the friendly faces we grew up with. They lived in a world of laugh tracks and neatly resolved problems, a world where every challenge could be overcome in 22 minutes plus commercials. We invited them into our homes, and in a way we felt like we knew them. But the truth is, we only ever knew the character. We only ever saw the smile. We rarely, if ever, considered the weight that might be hiding behind it. What happens when the cameras stop rolling and the carefully constructed world of a television show gives way to the complex, often painful reality of life? This is the story of a young man who wore one of those brilliant smiles. He was a trailblazer, a role model, and for a shining moment in time, he was one of the brightest young stars in the sky. But behind the curtain of fame, he was fighting a silent, devastating battle that no one could see. This is the story of Lee Thompson Young. To understand the world that made Lee Thompson Young a star, you have to transport yourself back to the turn of the millennium. It was a unique and slightly anxious time. The Y2K bug had come and gone without plunging the world into digital darkness, and there was a feeling of stepping into a new, undefined future. Pop culture was a vibrant, often saccharine landscape. Boy bands and pop princesses dominated the airwaves. Fashion was a questionable mix of denim and frosted tips, and television was undergoing its own quiet revolution. At the heart of this, for a younger generation, was the Disney Channel. This wasn't the media behemoth we know today with sprawling cinematic universes. In the late 90s and early 2000s, it was a more focused, almost quaint cable channel building a powerful brand on a specific kind of aspirational entertainment. It was the era of the DCOM, the Disney Channel original movie, and a slate of original series that created a new kind of celebrity, the Disney Channel star. These weren't the mega-famous child actors of old Hollywood. They were relatable kid-next-door types who became famous for playing characters, who were themselves navigating the ordinary trials of being a teenager, first crushes, homework, and awkward social hierarchies. Shows like Lizzie McGuire and even Stevens built empires on this formula. They were wholesome, funny, and importantly, almost exclusively centered on white suburban experiences. Into this very specific cultural moment stepped Lee Thompson Young. The landscape for black actors, especially young ones, was different. While there were certainly successful black sitcoms and stars, the role of the teen idol, that heartthrob figure whose poster adorned bedroom walls, was a space not often occupied by a young black man. Will Smith had, of course, broken the mold with The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but he was the exception that proved the rule. He was a singular phenomenon. The industry hadn't yet created a pipeline for a successor. There was no established path for a young black actor to become the kind of mainstream, family-friendly hero that Disney specialized in creating. And it was against this backdrop that a show was conceived that would change the formula, and in the process change one young man's life forever. Lee Thompson Young was born on February 1st, 1984, in Columbia, South Carolina. From an early age, it was clear he was not destined for a quiet, conventional life. His parents, Velma Love and Tommy Scott Young, separated when he was young, but they co-parented with a shared focus on nurturing their son's burgeoning passions. It was in the third grade, after playing Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in a school play, that the acting bug first bit. It wasn't just a fleeting childhood fancy. It was a calling. He felt a connection to the stage, a sense of purpose that would guide the rest of his life. His mother, Velma, saw his dedication and became his staunchest supporter. Recognizing that his talent needed a bigger stage than South Carolina could offer, she made a life-altering decision. At the tender age of 12, Lee and his mother moved to New York City, the vibrant, chaotic heart of the American theater scene. It was a huge gamble, a testament to a mother's faith in her son's dream. In New York, Lee honed his craft. He wasn't just waiting for a lucky break, he was working. He secured an agent and began to land roles in theater productions, immersing himself in the discipline of live performance. But it was a casting call for a new Disney Channel show that would catapult him from the New York stage to television screens across the country. The show was called The Famous Jett Jackson. The concept itself was groundbreaking for Disney. It centered on a 16-year-old actor named Jett Jackson, who starred in a hit action show called Silverstone. In a unique meta-narrative, Jett decides he misses his normal life and convinces his producers to move the entire production of his fictional show to his sleepy hometown in North Carolina. The series would then toggle between Jett's adventures as a globe-trotting secret agent on Silverstone and his daily life as a regular teenager navigating high school and family. Disney was looking for someone special. They needed a young actor who could believably play both a charismatic action hero and a down-to-earth kid. They needed someone with charm, comedic timing, and an inherent likability. They found all of it and more in Lee Thompson Young. When he landed the role at just 14, it was more than just a job. It was a seismic shift. In an instant, Lee became the face of a flagship Disney series. He wasn't a sidekick or a supporting character, he was the hero. The Famous Jett Jackson was a hit, and Lee was at the center of it all. He became one of the very first black teen idols of the Disney generation. Young kids, especially black kids, saw something on their screens they had rarely seen before. A hero who looked like them. He was cool. He was smart. He was the star. The pressure, however, was immense. He was the anchor of the entire production. But Lee was more than just a performer. He was a creator. This is one of the first often overlooked signs of the depth and ambition that defined him. He didn't just want to say the lines. He wanted to understand the story from the inside out. He had a passion for writing and a keen interest in the mechanics of filmmaking. He famously approached the show's creators and asked to be more involved behind the scenes. They listened. Lee Thompson Young ended up co-writing one of the show's most beloved episodes, What You Wish For, a poignant story where Jett's character wishes he had never become famous. It was a striking piece of art imitating life, a young man already exploring the complex duality of his own existence through his character. After 3 seasons and a successful TV movie, Disney decided to end the show. Lee was at a crossroads. He was 17 years old, a household name for a certain generation, with the world seemingly at his feet. He could have easily ridden the wave of fame, jumping from one project to the next. But he made a choice that stunned many in the industry and revealed the true nature of his character. He decided to go to college. He didn't just choose any college, he was accepted into the prestigious University of Southern California School of Cinematic Arts, the alma mater of filmmakers like George Lucas and Robert Zemeckis. He chose to major in cinematic arts with a minor in African American studies. It was a powerful statement. He wasn't just a teen idol, he was a serious artist, an intellectual who wanted to master the craft of storytelling. He turned away from the peak of his celebrity to sit in classrooms, to study film theory, to learn and to grow. He graduated with honors, a testament to his discipline and his thirst for knowledge. His post-college career was a steady climb of respectable, diverse roles. He actively avoided being typecast. He appeared in the critically acclaimed film Friday Night Lights, played a key supporting role in the inspirational drama Akeelah and the Bee, and had a memorable comedic turn on the sitcom Scrubs. He was proving his range, transitioning gracefully from teen star to a working adult actor. Then came the role that would define the final chapter of his career, Detective Barry Frost on the hit TNT series Rizzoli and Isles. It was in many ways the perfect part for him. Frost was the tech-savvy, loyal, and often funny partner to Jane Rizzoli, played by Angie Harmon. He was portrayed as brilliant, but also slightly squeamish and terrified of dead bodies, a comedic quirk that endeared him to millions of viewers. He was a core part of a successful ensemble cast on a major network show. On the surface, it looked like the perfect second act. He had successfully navigated the treacherous waters of child stardom and emerged as a respected, well-liked actor with a stable job. But behind the steady work and the easy smile he flashed on screen, a private, lifelong struggle was entering its most dangerous phase. To his colleagues, Lee Thompson Young was a beacon of light. The cast and crew of Rizzoli and Isles remember him, not just as a talented actor, but as a wonderful human being. He was known for his gentle soul, his infectious laugh, and his profound intelligence. Angie Harmon described him as a constant, gentle, loving, brilliant light. Sasha Alexander, who played Maura Isles, remembered his sweet, kind, and graceful nature. Crew members recall him being the person who always said hello, who remembered everyone's name, and who radiated a genuine warmth and kindness. He was funny, but his humor was subtle and smart. He was also deeply intellectual and spiritually curious. One of the most private and rarely discussed aspects of his life was his deep connection to his Yoruba heritage. He was a practitioner of the traditional West African religion, a spiritual path that originated in Nigeria and emphasizes a connection to one's ancestors and a pantheon of deities known as orishas. This was not a casual interest. In the years before his death, Lee had traveled to a village in Nigeria to immerse himself in the culture, and was eventually initiated as a priest in the Yoruba tradition. This spiritual journey was a core part of his identity. It speaks to a man who was searching for meaning, for a connection to something deeper and more ancient than the fleeting world of Hollywood. He carried this sense of quiet dignity and spiritual depth with him onto the set. Yet there was a profound and tragic disconnect between the bright, loving man his friends and colleagues saw and the man who existed when he was alone. For years, since he was a teenager, Lee had been struggling with his mental health. After his death, his family revealed that he had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. He was also fighting a severe battle with depression. Bipolar disorder is a condition of extremes. It can manifest in periods of mania, high energy, euphoria, and racing thoughts, and periods of intense, often debilitating depression. It's a relentless, cyclical illness that can warp a person's perception of reality. For someone living in the public eye, the pressure to mask this turmoil must have been immense. The world knew him as the capable Jett Jackson or the witty Barry Frost. It was a mask he wore with incredible grace, but a mask nonetheless. His manager, Jonathan Baruch, later said, "Lee was a brilliant young actor. He was a wonderful and gentle soul who will be truly missed. We are in shock." That shock was a common theme. The people who worked with him every day saw his professionalism and his kindness, but they were largely unaware of the sheer depth of the pain he was enduring. He was a deeply private person, and he kept his struggle locked away. His family knew, and they supported him through years of therapy and treatment. He was actively fighting, seeking help, and trying to manage his illness. There's a heartbreaking quote from his mother, Velma, who spoke about his condition after his passing. She said, in his late teenage years, he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and I noticed that he would get on a high and then he would go on a low. He was a very private person. He would not want to talk about it because he would not want to be a burden on anyone else. Think about that for a moment. A young man beloved by so many felt that his own immense suffering would be a burden. That simple, devastating sentence reveals so much about the crushing stigma of mental illness. He was worried about how his private pain would affect others, a testament to his gentle nature, but also a reflection of a world that often treats mental health not as an illness to be treated, but as a weakness to be hidden. He carried this weight largely alone, trying to balance the demands of a successful career with the chaos of a brain at war with itself. The smile was his armor, but even the strongest armor eventually cracks. Lee Thompson Young's death was not a scandal in the traditional Hollywood sense. There were no sordid secrets or salacious details, but it did create a profound and painful controversy, a controversy born of grief and a desperate need to understand. The debate that followed was not about his character, but about the systems and stigmas that failed him and so many others like him. On the morning of August 19th, 2013, when Lee didn't show up to the set of Rizzoli and Isles, his colleagues were immediately concerned. It was completely out of character for the punctual and professional actor. The production staff called his landlord to check on him. When his apartment door was opened, he was found dead. The cause of death was a self-inflicted gunshot wound. He was 29 years old. The news sent a shockwave of grief through Hollywood and among the fans who had grown up with him. The question on everyone's lips was, why? How could someone so young, so talented, and by all accounts so kind, come to such a tragic end? His death forced a difficult and long overdue conversation into the open. First, it cast a harsh spotlight on the immense, often unseen pressures placed on child stars. We love the narrative of the successful transition, the child actor who becomes a well-adjusted adult. But for every success story, there are countless others who struggle with the psychological fallout of growing up in a high-pressure, adult environment. Lee seemed to be one of the success stories. He avoided the typical pitfalls of drugs and public meltdowns. He went to college, built a solid career, and maintained a reputation for professionalism. His story shattered the illusion that a good transition protects you from internal demons. It proved that the wounds of child stardom aren't always visible. More importantly, his death ignited a crucial debate about mental health within the African American community. Historically, there's been a deep-seated stigma attached to mental illness in Black culture. Rooted in a history that demanded resilience and strength in the face of systemic oppression, seeking help for mental or emotional struggles has often been viewed as a sign of weakness. There's a cultural pressure, particularly for Black men, to be strong, to be providers, to endure silently. The church and the family have traditionally been the primary sources of support, with clinical therapy and psychiatry often viewed with suspicion or as something for other people. Lee's story brought this issue to the forefront in a painfully personal way. Here was a man who was in many ways a role model of Black excellence. He was intelligent, successful, and carried himself with dignity. His suicide challenged the dangerous stereotype that depression and other mental illnesses are somehow not Black problems. It highlighted the urgent need for safe spaces where Black men and women can be vulnerable and seek professional help without fear of judgment. His mother, Velma Love, and his sister, Tamu Lewis, bravely chose to channel their grief into action. They created the Lee Thompson Young Foundation, an organization dedicated to erasing the stigma surrounding mental illness. They speak openly about Lee's diagnosis, his struggles, and the importance of mental health literacy. They are fighting to ensure that his legacy is not just one of tragedy, but of change. Their work confronts the historical debate head-on, advocating for a new cultural understanding where mental health is treated with the same seriousness as physical health. Lee's story, in their hands, has become a powerful tool for education and empathy. The long-term significance of Lee Thompson Young's story is a complex tapestry woven from threads of triumph and tragedy. His life and his death left an indelible mark on culture, prompting reflections that continue to be relevant today. His primary cultural impact, of course, began with the famous Jett Jackson. In the landscape of late 90s television, a show with a young black lead who was portrayed as an intelligent, capable, and universally admired hero was a quiet revolution. He wasn't a comedic sidekick. He was the aspirational figure at the center of the story. For a generation of black children, Jett Jackson was a reflection of their own potential. He was proof that they too could be the hero. Lee carried that responsibility with a grace far beyond his years. He was a pioneer who helped pave the way for a more diverse and inclusive era of children's programming. His success created a ripple effect, demonstrating to network executives that audiences were more than ready for heroes of all colors. Beyond that groundbreaking role, his career choices spoke volumes. By stepping away from the spotlight to pursue a formal education at USC, he redefined what it meant to be a young star. He signaled that intellectual curiosity and artistic integrity were more valuable than fleeting fame. He chose the path of an artist over the path of a celebrity, a distinction that earned him immense respect among his peers. Tragically, his most enduring legacy is tied to the manner of his death. It serves as a somber and powerful reminder of the hidden struggles that can lie beneath a successful exterior. His story has become a touchstone in the ongoing global conversation about mental health. When celebrities like him, who seem to have it all, reveal their vulnerabilities, it helps to dismantle the shame that prevents so many ordinary people from seeking help. His death forced a specific and necessary reckoning within the entertainment industry. The cast and crew of Rizzoli and Isles were left heartbroken and grappling with how to move forward. They paid tribute to him beautifully on screen. In the first episode after his passing, the show's characters learn of Barry Frost's death in a car accident. The episode is a raw and emotional hour of television, with the actors clearly channeling their real-life grief into their performances. The series retired his character with honor and respect, and the final shot of the tribute episode shows a memorial card with his face, a silent acknowledgement of their loss. This public grieving process showed a level of humanity and care that resonated deeply with audiences. Ultimately, Lee Thompson Young still matters because his story encapsulates a profound human truth that strength and vulnerability are not opposites, but are often intertwined. He was strong enough to build a career, to be a role model, to fight his illness in private for years, and he was vulnerable enough to be broken by it. His life challenges us to be more compassionate, more observant, and more willing to talk openly about the invisible battles people are fighting every day. He reminds us that success is not a vaccine against pain, and that the kindest, brightest smiles can sometimes hide the deepest sorrows. In the end, how do we remember Lee Thompson Young? It's easy to define him by the two poles of his public story, the bright, smiling Disney star and the tragic figure of his final days. But to do so would be a disservice to the complex, intelligent, and gentle man who lived between those two extremes. He was more than Jett Jackson. He was a writer, a scholar, a traveler, and a spiritual seeker. He was a son and a brother who was loved so fiercely that his family turned their unimaginable grief into a force for public good. He was a colleague whose kindness and light left a permanent impression on everyone he worked with. The greatest lesson from Lee Thompson Young's life is one of empathy. It's a call to look past the surface, to recognize that everyone is carrying a story we cannot see. It's a reminder that we need to build a world where it's okay to not be okay, and where reaching out for help is seen not as a burden, but as an act of profound courage. Lee Thompson. Young's light may have been extinguished far too soon, but the echo of his gentle soul and the important conversation his story continues to inspire will resonate for a long, long time to come. That's a wrap for today's video. If you enjoyed it, smash that like button, drop us a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss our new content. Thanks for watching.